Society podcast. I'm Irvin, your host, and today I have Corey Berrier on the show. What's going on, Society Corey? Podcast. I'm Irvin, your host, and today I have Corey Berrier on the show. What's going on, Corey?
What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for taking time and coming on the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me, dude.
All right, yeah, man, for sure. So the first question I always ask all my guests is just tell the audience who Corey is and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Corey Berrier, and I am the sales CEO. And what that means is I consult and coach small to medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs on how to make their sales team better. Really, I go in and I plug the holes in the boat, right? So it's always great, Irvin, to have another set of eyes on your business. I don't care who you are, because if you're working inside the business, lots of times it's hard to see what the hell's really going on, right? Because you're so caught up in the day-to-day and you just can't see stuff that's right in front of you. And so, essentially I come in and I take a look at not only the sales department, but the inbound call center, right? Outbound call center. Because look, it all starts with the first touch. It all starts with that first person that you talk to. And if that's an uneducated or untrained, shouldn't say uneducated necessarily, but uneducated with the job and how it works and the process, that's the first touch. So what do you think, Irvin, happens when somebody calls and they get somebody on the phone that absolutely does not know what they're talking about? Right? I mean, it's not good. Let's just say that it's not a good idea to have the first point of contact to be somebody that doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And so I come in and I work with the sales team. I move to whatever next department I need to look at in order to make the company successful, essentially.
Yeah, and I guess when people think sales, I guess like their understanding is just like one specific department, like the whoever goes out there and talks to the customer or whatever. But like, yeah, I see like how you're explaining it right now. Like I see that's like the whole freaking company, to be honest. The whole company is part of the sales. So
yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing, dude. Like I even go in and work with okay, so just to give you an example, like the company that pops into my head, the plumbing company, you've heard me share about this before, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, these guys, they're they've got processes that people don't follow, right? And if people are not following your process, they're not following what your core values are. Well, that breeds a culture of, I don't want to say disaster, but it definitely doesn't breed the culture that you want it to breed. In other words, if people are not following what you believe in your core as to what the company should be doing, then the culture goes sideways. And that's kind of what's happened in this situation. And it's hard because I'm close with the owner, right? I mean, I work with him obviously one-on-one in addition to the sales team. And so it's really hard when you have someone that's an amazing human being and they believe that they have amazing human beings under them. And the fact of the matter is, one or two of the amazing human beings are not so amazing.
yeah,
So, but he and this gentleman struggles because he's got a big heart, right? And he wants to provide and he wants to create jobs for people and create an awesome work environment, and people take advantage of that. And at the end of the day, it's not fair to him, really. But you just have to navigate. My job is to navigate around those issues, right? I can't go in and say, hey, fire everybody. I mean, I could do that, but I don't know that would be productive, right? I have to get in there and ask questions, find out what's going on, find out from this person what their perspective is, find out from this manager what their perspective is. And then I come together with all of these perspectives and I figure out which one makes the most sense, or maybe in addition to, and what the owner wants, right? I mean, the owner, at the end of the day, he writes the check that I cash, right? So
Yeah.
it's in my best interest to make sure he's happy. But, and the hardest part, I think, with what I do is connecting the dots for somebody that thinks the dots are connected, but they're not. And I have to really pay attention to how I say the things that I say so they're not offensive. So it doesn't come across as, hey, dude, you're running your company like shit, right? And I would never say that to him. And
Yeah.
he's not. But some of the guys under him, we've eliminated because they're cancerous. And you can't. And look, if everybody listening, if you own a business, which I'm sure you do if you listen to this podcast, you got to pay attention to this stuff. Because if you have one cancerous person on your team, they can ruin. It's just like the whole bad apple scenario we've always heard. One bad apple in a bunch could ruin the rest. Well,
Yep.
it's really a true thing. It was a long answer to your question, but
Yeah, dude, but that gives like the whole, like, as just talking, like I'm visualizing everything. Like everybody just builds up these companies, with 10, 20 employees now, where they don't start with the core values or anything like that, systems, and they just, build because they think that's what it is. It's just hire and do the work, and that's it. Go home
right.
type of deal. So it's like whenever they get to like the 10, 20 employees, like that's where you come in and you have to fix all this shit up because
Well,
they
that's
didn't do it
true.
from the beginning.
Well, that's true. And I think you'll understand why when I tell you this, right? I mean, when you think about a plumbing company or an HVAC company or any service-based business, how does it start? Typically it starts with the owner doing the work, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the trade. And then that owner, which is not an owner at the time, maybe he's working for himself or maybe he's working for somebody else. He's learning everything. And then he gets a grasp of it and starts his own business. Well, that's wonderful. I encourage that. However, you have to understand there's a lot to running a business. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
dude.
shit people don't realize. There's insurance, there's taxes, there's, the building that you're in, there's trucks, there's equipment. I mean, there's a lot of shit when
Yeah.
you're outfitting 15 or 20 guys, right? And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and again, I encourage, if you want to start a business, by all means you should. But just know that you also may want to hire somebody when you're starting out to kind of guide you with what you need to do if you can afford it. And so, because it eliminates a lot of these issues, right? Going down the road, 10 years down the road, or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like exactly like the issues and stuff that I was running into because I grew up in the electrical field. My dad has, his business back home, 5.5 hours away from Austin where I'm at. And like, I grew up working with him. And then I moved to Houston, not essentially to start working, but to play soccer. And then I just started looking for work. And I had no intention on starting a business, but here I am.
All right.
And I didn't have no plan. I didn't have, any guys. I didn't have anything really. Like I just started looking for work because I wanted to make the extra money and I didn't want to be bored. That's it. So like I just went in with the mindset of like, I mean, how hard can it be type of deal. And now it's like I see that it's like there's like all this shit, man, that's involved with like the core values, being an Arte, when Andy and Ed like they're spitting that out religiously. Core values, system and processes, the insurance, the vehicles, the gas, the taxes for the employees, like all this shit. And it's like, damn, dude, like if everybody that wants to start a business knows how difficult it is, like they're gonna think twice about it. And they're not just gonna say, oh, I want to start this company and sell shirts and do all this shit. And it's like, no, dude, like you have to look at, like all these little things, especially like what you do with the sales, because that's like the whole company is pretty much selling. They're representing themselves.
Yeah, because without a sale, you don't have a business, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if you don't sell the product or service, you can't do business. I mean, period. And if your salespeople suck, then, you've got to look at that because they're your frontline people, so to speak, right? They're the people representing your business. And if they're, here's a good example. Like think about this. Do you have work trucks and vans or whatever?
I have one.
So, and it's got your logos and stuff on it, right?
Yep.
What if somebody else was driving that and they see it parked at a strip club? Like, that's the kind of shit people don't think about, right? That would be awful for a company, for somebody to drive by and see, Irvin's plumbing company in the strip club, right? I mean,
unless you're doing work.
Think about that. Well, unless you're doing work, right?
Yeah,
well, if it's 12 o'clock at night, you ain't doing work. and that brings me to another point. Then you have to worry about, is that person going to drive home drunk in that company van?
Yeah,
and if they do and they kill somebody, whose ass is it? Not theirs. I mean, it will be to an extent, but ultimately it's going to fall back on the business owner.
Yeah.
That could take you out. I mean, it could take you out like that.
Yeah, dude, that's shit, dude. That's everybody needs to pay attention to this little shit, man, because shit'll fuck you up. Like you said, it'll fuck you up like within a second.
Yeah, dude. I mean, overnight you could lose everything. I mean, it's just the truth. And and if you don't pay attention to these things, at some point that could happen. And it does happen, right? You just better hope, one, that your insurance is good enough to cover whatever it is that we're talking about. And the reason I brought this up, because sure enough, there was both of those incidences. There was one where somebody, and this was years ago, a few years ago, the van or truck broke down at the damn strip club. So guess what? They had to call the owner, and the owner was like, "What the fuck are you doing in the van at the strip club?" And what are you going to say? It's midnight. Like, well, what are you going to say? I'm there working? No.
Yeah.
So, and then the other point was, there was a guy that openly drank, smoked weed, and did cocaine. Now, it's legal to drink. It's legal to smoke weed where they are, but it ain't legal to do cocaine. And if you're talking about that shit amongst the peers of your peers in your business, and I don't mean the owner was doing, I mean one of the employees.
Yeah.
And we found out about it, and he obviously had to go. I mean, you can't keep somebody like that. That's a massive liability. So you just got to pay attention to don't hire warm bodies, because warm bodies will get your ass in trouble. And the end of the day, it's 3 times as much work. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
yeah, no, but you're saying like warm bodies as in like dudes that already have years of experience, or?
No, I'm talking about like, oh shit, I just, I've got 40 leads coming in that are hot, and I only have 20 guys. Man, let's just hire somebody just so we can make sure they can make the call. Well, how much good does that do? Because if they get there and they can't do the job, well, what's the point in hiring them, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen this shit happen. I've seen it happen.
Yeah, and the reason I brought up like the years of experience is because like, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is everywhere, but like in the electrical, where I'm trying to, like, if I'm trying to hire somebody, people that have like years of experience, like they usually tend to do shit their own way. So like whenever you try to train them and stuff, they still fall back and eventually do it their own way, and it might not be like the right way to do it. That's like their way of like cutting corners already, because that's the way that their mentality already is. So like I believe that you have to hire them when they have maybe a year of experience, just so they know the basics of like the electrical industry, what wires they can touch and nothing's going to happen to them, or what wires they cannot touch, what wires they cannot put together, type of deal. And then from there, just train them up to actually have that knowledge.
Yeah, dude. And that's so true. And I'll tell you, part of the reason I say that's true is because think about this, dude. If you hire somebody that's only got a year's experience, they haven't really had time to have bad habits.
Yeah.
So that way, because if you bring somebody on that's super experienced, right, they do it their way. And their way is the right way because they've been doing it for 15 years. But their way is not the way you as the business owner want them to operate. So, now you've got to try to break that programming, if you will, of the person that's been doing what they've been doing for 15 years. And that's a bitch. It just is.
Yeah. So like whenever you had your other businesses, like was that was that an issue for you? Is that like the reason that you got into sales, or why did you end up becoming the sales coach?
So, so essentially, I've been in sales for 25 years. I have started 4 businesses, and some of them were successful, some of them were not. And to your point about hiring employees, I did exactly what I just said for people
Mm,
not to do.
yeah.
And I can tell you that because I've done it. I hired the first person that presented themselves at my med spa. And here was the issue, Irvin. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right? I didn't know what to look for. And this person could talk a good game, and I thought she sounded like she was a great fit, but wound up being completely a nut job. And it was a disaster because well, I won't get into all the details, but essentially it was you've got to make sure you're vetting your people, right? You've got to make sure you're not hiring somebody that's going to damage your reputation, that's going to say shit about you that's not true, or that they're going to tell the customer something that's not true, or they're going to steal the customers from you. It could be a number of things. So it's really important when you're bringing somebody onto a business to hire the right people because they can sink you. They can absolutely sink you. And that was part of the issue that I had with the med spa. A couple of things. One, I was not a good leader. I'm going to tell you that right now. I just wasn't. I didn't have the leadership skills that I have at this point. And so I was the boss, right? And the boss. So let me explain to everybody what the difference is, or what I mean when I say that. The difference is a leader will try to sit down and understand from your perspective. They will sit with you and try to make sure that they can help you through whatever it is. A boss, which is what I decided to be at the time, was I'm the boss, I'm the owner, do it my way or get the fuck out. Right? And that was kind of my approach. I mean, I didn't say it just like that, but I might as well have. I'm sure my
Yeah.
face said all of that. And so leading like a boss, nobody wants to work with somebody like that. Nobody wants to work with somebody whose ego is so astronomically big that they can't even see they're damaging their own company by being a dick, essentially. And that's exactly what happened to me. And that's part of the reason that I lost that business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. The that's the same thing that where everybody thinks, the boss is what you have to be. And that's part of like the how I was saying earlier, where people think business is simple. They're just like, oh, I'm just gonna hire employees, and I'm the boss. I'll just tell them what to do.
Right.
And that's just like they fuck up the whole company. So that's when you have to come in and fix all that stuff.
That's exactly right. Which, hey, at the end of the day, it gives me a position, it gives me a job. So I'm okay with that at this point.
So did you like realize, that you were being the boss instead of the leader? Like, did you realize that on your own, or you came across something that you're like, oh shit?
Glad you asked. That's such a great question. I don't think anybody's asked me that. So a couple of things, and I'm going to try to tell this story as briefly as I can, and I'm going to try to tell it without, getting emotional because it is it's tied very close to my heart. The day that my business partner in the clinic in the med spa, told me he wasn't going to pay me anymore, there's two things that are significant about that day. One, I was so confused. I didn't understand why he would. I ran the entire business, period. He didn't do shit at all. Like, he wasn't in the business. He funded part of the business, but that was it. And when he said that to me, it just didn't make sense. Right? I didn't understand how. I mean, I run the whole deal. Like, how you don't even know how to do anything anyway. And so the second part of that, that was devastating in itself. And then the second part of that, I was supposed to buy my ticket to go see Tony Robbins that day.
Wow.
And I had visualized, I had journaled, like I knew I was going to that event. And by not getting paid, it, that caused a problem, right? Because that was what I intended on spending part of my money on, was that ticket. And I couldn't do that. And that was probably more upsetting. I don't know if it was more upsetting or if it was just, it was just like, it crushed me. It absolutely crushed me. And my wife, about 3 days, I'm going to say 3 days after that happened, she called me while I was still at work. I stayed on because I thought he's gonna pull his head out of his ass and realize that, like, he can't do this on his own. And my wife called me and she said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm at work." I was irritated, and I said, "I'm at work. What do you need?" And she said, "I need you to go to your computer." I said, "Look, dude, I'm super busy. I don't have time." And she said, "No, but really, I need you to go sit down at your computer." And so I did. And I opened my computer. She said, "I need you to open your email." And at this point, I didn't know what the hell to expect. My day, the last 2 or 3 days prior to that were awful. So I just kind of expected it to be, I didn't know what to expect. And she had contacted Robin's Research and worked out a deal that, that got me a VIP ticket for that event. And I got to tell you, dude, this is the part where I get a little choked up, because it was by far the nicest thing anybody's ever done for me. And that event changed my life. I wound up exiting the company, naturally. And I went to the event, and to answer your original question, what clicked was when I got back from the event and I started to read Think and Grow Rich. And when I started to read that, I realized that I was the chokehold on the business, because I was leading like a boss instead of like a leader. And I just didn't realize I was the chokehold. You know what I mean? I just didn't know. I just didn't fucking see it. And so that was the point that changed everything for me, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Well, I try not to get emotional, but it pretty much happens every time.
Yeah. No, man, dude, that's awesome, dude. And I mean, like, whenever you're telling the story, like, I was already thinking, like, oh man, like you missed out on the event, kind of thing. But I mean, that's crazy, dude. Like that you still wound up going, and then that shit like really just fucking took you to another path. That's where you're at right now. And
Changed my life, dude. It changed my life. And, and then it's interesting, dude. I wound up going, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, I wound up going and actually crewing for Tony Robbins. Like, I was one of the crew members that you see if you've ever been to one of his events, in the black shirts. And that was also just an unbelievable experience. Both times I walked on fire, which, there's not a hell of a lot of people that could say they've done that. And, it was absolutely incredible. It was incredible.
and then how did you like after you realized that? How did you dive into like the sales specifically? In sales instead of like a I guess business coaching or consultant or something like that.
So I struggled for a long time with my identity during that period. I didn't know, because I had been in the fitness space for over a decade, coaching people, and gotten into the hormone replacement center or medical spa, and I was just so confused as to what it was I was supposed to be doing, and until I hired a coach that literally had less experience than I did. And he even said to me, he said, like, I have like 10 years less sales experience than you. Why do you need to hire me? And I'm like, honestly, I just need I need your belief in me. Because you believe in me more than I believe in me. And that was literally why I hired him. And so that was the point when I realized, like, shit, well, I'm struggling to look for all these different avenues that I want to do. But the reality is, I know the most about sales. I mean, I can talk about sales all damn day. Hell, you've seen it. I do it on Clubhouse twice a day.
Yeah.
I love it. And it was kind of like that boss leader thing. It was right in front of my face, and I just couldn't see it. I don't know why. So that's what changed. That's kind of that's exactly what got me back into what I'm the most passionate about, which is sales.
You just had to take that step back, man, and look at the bigger picture and just be like, oh shit, like I'm not doing this shit the right way.
Exactly, dude. And I wanted to coach on mindset, or I wanted to coach on NLP, and I'm like, I know about those things, right? But it's not my wheelhouse. Like, I'm an NLP practitioner. That doesn't mean I can teach it. I know it. That means I went through the course. I'm certified, but that doesn't mean I can teach it. So it's stupid to try to teach something that you haven't done. And I don't want to say mastered, but kind of, right? I mean, I've done all kinds of sales. I've broken shit ton of sales records. I've held sales records. In previous companies, previous places that I've been either worked for or worked in or whatever whichever. So I don't know, man. I just kind of found my wheelhouse, and it's interesting because getting into service-based companies is not my wheelhouse necessarily. It is now, but I didn't know anything about plumbing. I didn't know anything about HVAC. I didn't know anything about solar. But it doesn't really matter what the product is. I know how to sell it, right? I know that I can show you how to better communicate with your customer to close the deal. And that's really what sales is about, is communication.
Yeah.
And here's one more thing I'd love to drop really quick. If you're sending a bunch of emails to people, I want you to think about this. The 3 elements of communication are body language, which is 55% of how people communicate. Tonality, which is the voice inflection. If you hear my voice go up and down, that's tonality or voice inflection. And then the words. Tonality is 38%. 7% of communication is the words. So think about that shit, dude. When you send an email, you're only getting 7% of the communication element. That's not a very good number, dude.
Yeah. 7% effort.
Yeah. Think about that. I mean, people fire. It's kind of like, you get, people, obviously funnels are a tool that people use, and it's important. But if that's your only way of selling, you're going to go belly up, because first of all, people only open 20% of emails to begin with, right? And if you're not able to communicate effectively what you're trying to tell the customer, and you're not going to be able to do that in an email, right? People want to know you're a human being. They want to know that you're a person, that you care. You can't show that through words in an email. I mean, maybe to an extent, but not to the effect that you would like to close a sale.
Dude, and that's when, like, the if you ever, I'm pretty sure you have ordered stuff from First Form.
Oh yes.
Right? Have you ever gotten those videos where, like,
yes.
whoever's pet? Yeah,
absolutely. And a handwritten note. Like, they crush it with their customer service. And I got to tell you, dude, we're both part of RTA. I love Andy and I love Ed, but Andy's products upset my stomach. But guess what, dude? I promise you, I still wouldn't recommend another product outside of his, because I know he makes great products. They just don't agree with me. And that's okay. I mean, that's totally fine. One thing I want everybody to listen to, this is very important. You're not for everybody. Everybody doesn't need your product or service. And everybody can't use your product or service. So if you're trying to pitch your company or your product, figure out who you need to pitch it to. Because if you pitch it to everybody, you're going to feel like you've lost, because everybody's not going to love your shit. It's just the bottom line, right? I mean, my business, I'm for some people, and I'm sure there's some people I'm not for. right? I cuss a
Yeah.
lot, right? And I don't hold that back, right? I'm very open about my political stance. I'm very open about the fact that I think this whole COVID-19 stuff is a load of shit. I'm very vocal that I believe, and I hope we figure this out, that we're going to see this is the biggest scam we've ever seen. You and I probably will never see a scam this big.
Yeah.
There hasn't been one since Enron, right? You're in Texas now. I'm sure you may not have been there during Enron, but I'm sure you know what Enron is, right? Or do you?
No, I've sounds
All right.
familiar, but
Enron was one of the largest scams in the history, and essentially it was all a house of cards, dude. Like there was really nothing there, but people were pouring their 401ks into this company, their IRAs. It was awful. And at the end of the day, it was a shell company. There was nothing there. We're investing in literally the money that the owners were just taking home and spending. That was it. It was awful. And it had ruined so many lives, dude. So you need to check that documentary out. It's actually, I hate to admit this, but it's my favorite documentary on the planet because it amazes me how a team of people could deceive the whole world. But guess what, dude? We're sitting in it right now in 2021. We're sitting in how
dude.
it's incredible how and why people are not seeing what's going on. And so back to my point, that doesn't resonate with everybody, right? And hopefully I didn't just hopefully half your listenership didn't just drop off when I said that, but that's just me, dude, and that's just how I feel about it. And I look at what I think are the facts, but anyway, yeah, but you need to check out that documentary, Enron. It's amazing.
Where's that at?
You should find it. So it's spelled ENRON.
ENRON. Oh, I got it.
Enron, the
okay.
smartest
Scandal.
guys in the room.
Yeah, Houston, Texas.
That's it.
Jesus.
So you'll know exactly where those buildings are because they're still standing. I'm certain of that. I don't know what names on them. It's certainly not Enron. But yeah,
probably.
it was like one day these guys, one day I can't remember now. I've seen that movie 100 times. I'm trying to remember what exactly was the tipping point. Like they just, they were trading stock. Here's one of the things that they did do is they created energy. They traded energy. And I don't know shit about trading energy, but I do know that in California, because they got it to where energy was deregulated. What that means is there's no regulations on it. It's kind of like CBD oil right now. There's no regulation on it. You could put piss in a bottle and sell it for CBD oil and nobody would ever know. Meaning there's no oversight, right? There's nobody investigating the CBD industry right now.
Yeah.
And so what Enron did is they convinced the government, I think it was the Bushes at the time, which, I was a fan of the Bushes, but now I'm not so much because I'm finding out all kinds of shit. Anyway, my point here is this, is that Enron, they shut the power off in California and created massive rolling blackouts. And in order for you to get the power back on, you were paying like $50 a kilowatt or some shit. It was astronomical. And essentially, if you wanted power, you needed to pony up the money to get the power back on. And I'm not talking like a $250 bill. I'm talking like a $3,500 bill over a month. I mean, it was something absolutely ridiculous. But they had the power to do it because it was deregulated. They could do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. Didn't matter until they got caught.
Dude, that's Yeah, I'm gonna check it out, dude. That shit's fucking insane.
It's insane, dude. Insane.
Dude, and then well, what I was gonna say a little while ago was like how you're saying that you're not for everybody. You cuss a lot, you have open political views and all this, but like for you and everybody else that's actually authentic like that, you attract the people that actually resonate with you, and that just like creates more like loyalty and stuff like between y'all, right? Like that's what a lot of people like. They're scared to like put their stuff out there, kind of thing, and
Yeah,
they're
because
missing the whole point.
they are missing the whole point. Because if you realize that everybody's not for you, and let's just say you have let's say you have 20,000 followers, right? And you never talk about your political views. And one day, here's an example. I'm trying.
Yeah.
Somebody came out. The first guy was the rapper. What the hell? 50 Cent, right? 50. No, the one I was thinking about was The Rock.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, I
who.
was gonna say that.
Okay,
The
yeah.
Rock.
So The Rock came out and supported the Democratic Party, and when he did that, he lost a shit ton of followers. Right? He may have gained some followers, but he certainly lost a bunch of people on the right. And in that situation, I feel like that was probably a stupid move. However, everybody's not The Rock. So if you've got 20,000 followers and 10 of them fall off because they don't like what you said, and you still have 10,000 people that do like what you said, those 10,000 people are not going anywhere,
Yeah.
ever. So look at it like this. You don't have to wade through any more bullshit if you cut out people that are not your people.
Just makes your life easier.
It does,
and
absolutely.
and like if you lose that 10, you probably gained another 5 that are like, oh hell yeah, type of deal, and now they're like more connected with you. And then you still probably have like a certain number of people from the right that really don't care, that are just like, well, that's his opinion, it's whatever to me. Like if that's
Right.
what he wants to think, that's what he wants to like follow, like it's cool. And like those are the kind of people that they don't necessarily agree with you, but they like they respect you, still for being like that.
Well, it's kind of like Andy, right? Andy is certainly not for everybody,
Yeah.
right? Andy is extremely opinionated and he does not give a shit what you or I think about him, right?
Yep.
And so that's a risk he took being, having a fucking, I don't even know what his company's worth, but it's astronomical. He took a risk when he started the MFCEO project, and he took a risk going public and saying like, fuck every 5 seconds. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that don't buy his products at this point, but there's people like you and I that will never stop buying his shit
Yep.
because he's our people.
Oh, dude.
Boom. What is that? The megawatt?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the megawatt actually, so I should clarify. It's just the protein bars and the protein that don't set with me.
Okay.
Megawatt, freaking off the hook. I love it.
Yeah, dude, it's
But
awesome.
so glad you pointed that out because I think it's in the cabinet somewhere and I just have completely forgotten about it. So I'm glad you brought that up because I totally forgot about it. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's amazing
Dude,
stuff.
yeah, and the reason that Andy is like that is, that's what made me attracted to the MFCEO. That's the very first podcast that I started listening to, because I heard Dan Flashman shout it out in one of the courses that I bought for Ty Lopez. So he was in the course, and then he said, he was talking about like the mindset and stuff, and he's like, you gotta start listening to podcasts. He shouted out MFCEO, but I went to go look for it thinking it was Ed's podcast. But I just like sticked around. I was like, well, I mean, this sounds pretty good, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick to it.
It's really funny you say that because I was an Ed Milet fan. In fact, I didn't even know who Andy Frisella was until I connected with a guy. I shouldn't say I didn't know who I knew of him, but I'd never really listened to his podcast ever until I went and met up with one of the syndicate members. And he was like, look, I think you should do 75 hard. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is. And he was like, Well, let me tell you, he was like, I'm going to send you some podcasts and I want you to listen to these podcasts. And that literally started my journey with Andy. And so I went back after listening to that. Of course, I started it the next day. And I went back and listened to every single podcast he did. And I'm a massive fan now. You know, in fact,
awesome,
I've had Vaughn on my podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. So I haven't had Andy on yet, but I'll get him. I haven't really tried
Oh
either.
yeah,
So
dude. Man, you will when you get. I mean, you're getting Ian Smith, so I mean, I'm for sure, man. You'll be getting Andy and Ed.
yeah, I hope so. So yeah, I just got to try. I got to put in the effort though. I haven't even reached. I literally have not reached out to either one of them. Just because I know they get inundated with probably 5 million messages a day, and I'm like, I'm just gonna. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you, Irvin, dude. That's how I've gotten 98% of the people on my podcast. Was I just reach out and I say, hey, I host a podcast called Successful Life Podcast. I think you'd be a great fit to be a guest. Let me know when you have availability, and I'll put you on my schedule. And that's the message. That was it. And it wasn't like I did that 10 times to the same person. One time, and maybe I would reach out a second time if they didn't respond. But after that, I'm like, if they don't have, if you don't have time for me, that's cool. It's not that I'm anything important, but I also don't have time for you. 2 times.
Yeah.
And I've only
Yeah,
had
cool, man.
ever say to me, I'm not going to be on your podcast because you don't have X number of downloads. And I'm not going to say who it is, but he was kind of a douchebag, right? I've had people far greater than him on my podcast. And for him to egotistically say, well, unless you have 1,000 downloads. And I'm like, dude, like, who the fuck are you? I mean, like, so anyway, doesn't matter who it is. I'll tell you offline, but I'm not going to share it on here.
Yeah, it's all good. Awesome, man. Well, I know you got a row, so before we wrap up here, just tell the listeners where they can find you and everything you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Just at Corey Berrier, and Berrier spelled like Perrier, the water, except with the B. And you can find me pretty much on all the social channels there. Yeah. And, CoreyBerrier.com, which you'll find under any of the social. So, yeah, dude. Thank you. I appreciate this, Irvin. It's been great.
Awesome. Yeah, man, for sure. I'll link up everything on show notes, podcast, and all that stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, dude.
Awesome, man. So thanks for taking your time.
My pleasure.
Cool, man. Peace.
See ya.